now lives. So you see, when we look at the situation that we have in Greece, and they're saying, well, you know, Greece has this untenable situation with their welfare state. Germany has managed theirs better. It's not going to happen that much longer. As they point out, in 2014, 625,000 people sought asylum in the European Union. Just under a third of those, 200,000, applied in Germany alone, while Sweden received 81,000 applications, the highest number as a proportion of population. In other words, Sweden has about a tenth of the population of Germany, so they would have, if you scale that up, that would be equivalent to about 800,000 immigrants instead of 200,000 for Germany. See, they're going to where the welfare state is the best. They're going to the richest countries, and they're going to the countries like Sweden that has the most advanced socialist welfare state. They're not refugees. They are seeking to live off of other people, and they're being encouraged by these bankers, this Goldman Sachs banker, the UN representative on migration, saying, if you don't support that, if you don't support the collapse of your country, then you are racist and xenophobic. Stay with us when we come back. We're going to take a look at Jade Helm, and this is a deeper look than you've probably seen before. What is really behind this exercise? Stay with us. We'll be right back.
So what do you say about their influence? I mean, there's very powerful people there. Why does it have to be so secret?
Well,
I mean,
there is no secrecy. It's there is absolutely no secrecy.
I talked to the hotel guys.
It's just a private meeting.
If you want to know the evils lurking within the Bilderberg Group, look no further than the following quotes from Bilderberg insiders and those who've studied the secretive cabal. Bill Gates.
So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. Now that's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look.
Dr. Henry Kissinger at the 1992 Bilderberg meeting at Evian, France. Today, America would be outraged if UN troops entered Los Angeles to restore order, referring to the 1991 LA riots. Tomorrow, they will be grateful. This is especially true if they were told that there were an outside threat from beyond, i.e. an extraterrestrial invasion, whether real or promulgated, that threatened our very existence. It is then that all peoples of the world will plead to deliver them from this evil. The one thing every man fears is the unknown. When presented with this scenario, individual rights will be willingly relinquished for the guarantee of their well-being granted to them by the world government. David Rockefeller wrote in his book Memoirs, "If the Council on Foreign Relations raises the hackles of the conspiracy theorists, the Bilderberg meetings must induce apocalyptic visions of omnipotent international bankers plotting with unscrupulous government officials to impose cunning schemes on an ignorant and unsuspecting world." At the 1991 Bilderberg meeting at Baden, Germany, a meeting also attended by Bill Clinton, David Rockefeller said, "We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the lights of publicity during those years. But the world is more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national autodetermination practiced in past centuries." And David Rockefeller from his book Memoirs again, "Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I am proud of it."
Already we've seen leading members of Congress used to always attend, the Speaker of the House, representatives, ranking senators would attend. Now they don't dare because they get mail from their own constituents. Their own voters in their own congressional district are in their home state for the senators, saying if you do business with these criminals anymore, we'll never vote for you again. We'll vote for anybody else. And they've been politically frightened. out of the ballgame.
19th century politician and historian Lord Acton said the issue which has swept down the centuries and which will have to be fought sooner or later is the people versus the banks. The ruthless and cunning behavior of the attendees of the Bilderberg Conference can be summed up in the Machiavelli quote, "Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions." We can see the ripples of secrecy in the Bilderberg Group and that of President Obama's TPP, and Adam Weishaupt, founder of the Illuminati's quote, "The great strength of our order lies in its concealment. Let it never appear in any place in its own name, but always concealed by another name and another occupation." Baron Nathan Mayer Rothschild said, "I care not what puppet is placed on the throne of England to rule the empire. The man that controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the money supply." And if those quotes aren't creepy enough for you, David Spangler of the United Nations Directory of the Planetary Initiative said, "No one will enter the New World Order unless he or she will make a pledge to worship Lucifer. No one will enter the New Age unless he will take a Luciferian initiation." And it's not as if we have not been warned time and time again. Congressman Louis T. McFadden in 1932 said, "We have in this country one of the most corrupt institutions the world has ever known. I refer to the Federal Reserve Board. This evil institution has impoverished the people of the United States and has practically bankrupted our government. It has done this through the corrupt practices of the moneyed vultures who control it." Woodrow Wilson, who signed the Federal Reserve into existence, said, "I am a most unhappy man. I've unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is concentrated. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all our activities are in the hands of a few men." John Bound for INFOWARS.com.
Now, there was a headline this weekend on the Sunday Times, the London Sunday Times, "German tanks rolling back into Poland." That sounds pretty provocative, doesn't it? But actually, it's just Operation Noble Jump. It's just an exercise. This will be about 2,000 troops from several different countries. Compare that to Operation Jade Helm, where we have 1,200 troops in Texas alone. All the branches of Special Forces are going to be involved in Jade Helm. And of course, as they point out with Operation Noble Jump in Europe, this is in response to an increasingly expansionist Russia. That's what the Sunday Times says. Look, we always have these exercises in response to something. They're always there to prepare for a threat, and they're there to send a message. Well, clearly we can see what the situation is in Europe. We see they're preparing for this threat, we're told, that's coming from Russia. Never mind what George Soros and Victoria Nuland and others in the State Department did to create the situation in Ukraine. No, we're there to prepare for that threat and also to send a message to the Russians. So it begs the question, what's going on in America? What is the threat that they're responding to? What message are they trying to send? Of course, they always prepare where and how they're going to fight. And so when we look at the logo, Mastering the Human Domain, and we look at the fact that Admiral McRaven, who is a former commander of Special Forces, said, "Building understanding of the human domain requires boots on the ground, feeding information into the network. Geospatial intelligence is primarily biometric intelligence. It has a very long and troubling history."
Jade Helm 15. A military exercise of grand scale. The military claims the exercise is for overseas training, yet 3 of these United States have been listed as hostile. The term Mastering the Human Domain reveals to us that Jade Helm 15 is more than just a military exercise. It's also an exercise of the new field of geospatial intelligence, using human domain analytics to map the politics and thoughts of any nation, state, city, right down to the individual.
Jade Helm 15. That's what the United States Army is calling a large-scale military exercise. Special Operations Command will be training with other armed units beginning in July.
In a recent INFOWARS.com report, Master the Human Domain, the domestic plan behind Jade Helm, we break down what the Jade Helm logo refers to. In brief, a new discipline in intelligence has been at center stage for the past decade, activity-based intelligence, or ABI. According to TrajectoryMagazine.com, the human domain or human dimension, which is a vital and integral part of ABI, is defined as the presence, activities including transactions, both physical and virtual, culture, social structure, organization, networks and relationships, motivations, intent, vulnerabilities, and capabilities of humans, single or groups, across all domains of the operational environment, space, air, maritime, ground, and cyber. This article goes on to say that the focus on mastering the human domain was born out of a merging of 3 already existing disciplines of intelligence. That may be the case for this branding of this idea, but the exercise of mapping the human domain right down to the individual is a long-standing institutionalized strategy that has been going on for well over 100 years. What reason would the United States government have to invest so much time, resources, and money in order to pinpoint exact pockets of thought in a country founded on free thought, expression, and most of all, outspoken words against its own government? During his famous farewell address, Eisenhower warned the American people of an imminent and internal threat, a scientific elite.
We must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite.
The title, scientific elite, to most Americans might seem like nothing more than ordinary intangible rhetoric, typically thrown around by politicians during their speeches. This time, however, Eisenhower was not speaking in abstractions. There actually is a scientific elite. Jade Helm 15 is anything but the American way. It's a domestic scientific control grid whose purpose is domination and control. A technological infrastructure for authoritarian political control is not the end goal, but a means to that end of eugenics. The term eugenics, coined by Charles Darwin's half-cousin, Sir Francis Galton, in 1883, is a science dedicated to the engineering of the human genome by selectively breeding those humans with what they consider to be desirable qualities, such as intelligence, athleticism, etc., and eliminating those humans without these attributes and all races of humans unlike their own. Out of this, race theory and race science was born. Carl Pearson, a protege of Galton, assembled a biometrics laboratory based out of the University of London in 1907 in order to collect data about people mostly based on race. He also published a journal entitled Biometrica, which became very influential with American scientists and financiers who were becoming extremely interested in the concept of eugenics. As this movement grew in popularity, top American industrialists threw their money into the game. Carnegie, Harriman, and Rockefeller were among the top contributors. California became the eugenics capital of the world, while on the East Coast, Cold Spring Harbor Research Facility, located on Long Island, was collecting and storing biometric information on average Americans in order to begin the elimination of families as well as entire races of people. Through the efforts of the California eugenicists, mostly through written pamphlets and endowments mostly from the Rockefellers and Harriman, the eugenics movement found a second home in Germany in the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. This pre-World War II, well-funded international scientific community based around the eugenics movement was cementing its place as a standard in human academia when World War II broke out in full scale. The then CEO of IBM, Thomas J. Watson, worked hand in hand with Nazi Germany. In 1933, it was Watson who enthusiastically helped the Nazi plan and funded their national census, which, according to historian Edwin Black in his 2001 publication, IBM and the Holocaust, the 1933 census, with design help and tabulation services provided by IBM through its German subsidiary, proved to be pivotal to the Nazis in their efforts to identify, isolate, and ultimately destroy the country's Jewish, Gypsy, and other minority communities, as well as single out political opposition. While much of the world was forever altered by the events of the war, this eugenics-based community remained together. A similar and frighteningly more advanced version of this eugenics-based biometric